Hey guys, this is Heather from healthyveganrecipes.net. Alright, we're getting into soup season, and today we're going to make one of my favorites, split pea soup. Now for those of you who don't know this, split pea soup often comes with ham in it. Especially here in Canada, the French-Canadian version of pea soup includes ham. So it can be tricky sometimes to find a vegan version of it, and it is so tasty. So I love to make my own, and that way I know there is no animal food in it. Okay, so we're gonna start, as all fantastic soups start, with some garlic and onion. For those of you who want the recipe with the directions and all of the measurements, you can head over to healthyveganrecipes.net. I'm just going to go over how to make the recipe and the important things you should keep in mind when making it. So again, we will start with onion and garlic, which I have already chopped up and ready to go. I've got a soup pot that's heating up, and what I'm going to do is into that soup pot I'm going to put a little bit of white wine. And I'm going to braise the onion and the garlic. You can, if you prefer, saute them in some oil. I would use probably coconut oil, really nice flavor with the split pea soup. But I like, whenever possible, to avoid using oil, so I'm going to do it with some wine. All right, check it out. If you heat the pot and then add your wine, it's gonna bubble nicely, and the onions and the garlic are gonna cook a little bit. You're going to see them start to go translucent, meaning you can see through them a little bit, but not totally see through. Again, if you wanted to saute these first, what I would do is saute them in the oil and then add some wine for flavor. Okay, so when they get to look translucent, we are going to add the split peas, which are these guys right here. I'm using green. There's also yellow. They're kind of pretty. So you can use whichever one you like. So chuck those in there. And I'm also going to throw some seasoning in. I've got some bay leaves, and these are actually fresh from a friend's garden where I used to live in British Columbia. So nice memories with those. And then I've got some thyme. And this is also fresh thyme that I've dried. This is from Phil's garden, also in British Columbia. I'm carting them around with me for a little while, so it's about time I use them. If you rub them a little bit with your hands as you throw them in, it'll help release the flavor. And I'm gonna throw a little bit of oregano in here as well, just because I'm a little bit crazy. I like to put different flavors in there. Not everyone would do oregano in a split pea soup. Okie dokie. Stir that around a little bit so that the wine can soften up those peas just a little bit. And then what you're going to do is add some vegetable broth or water. Little trick I picked up from my sister-in-law, Phil's sister, is to boil the water in an electric kettle. And then when your soup is ready, you can just pour it on in, and you don't have to wait for it to come to a boil again. Saves time and helps preserve the flavor because it doesn't have to sit there in the water while it gets to boiling. All right, so what you're gonna do now is put a lid on here, and the name of the game is to let those peas cook. The beauty of a split pea soup, other than starting with garlic and onions, is to have them cook really well so that they're super soft and they get really nice and rich and creamy. If they don't cook properly, it's gonna taste a little bit starchy, and that's not really what you're going for. You want those things to cook really well, and not only will that make them taste super delicious, but it will also be much more easily digested. So, my tips for cooking these peas properly. I have two things I want to say. Number one, do not add any salt right now. I know you want to. Sometimes I kind of want to myself. But if you add salt now, those peas are going to get hard. They're not going to cook properly. and it won't be a good scene. So although you may feel like you want to flavor this up at this point with some salt, hold off, please, do it, okay? Another thing that I'll mention there is that some vegetable broth, and actually, okay, let me say this first. So vegetable broth has salt in it. Vegetable stock does not. So if you're buying some vegetable stock or broth, check the ingredients and make sure that there's no salt. If there is, you're not gonna wanna use it in this recipe. Just use some water. If you can find a stock that doesn't have salt in it, excellent. That will give you flavor, really, really rich, nice flavor without the salt that's gonna screw up the cooking of the peas. Okay, that's enough on that topic. My number 2 tip for cooking the peas properly is that this is boiling right now because I added boiling water. Turn it down to minimum. You want these guys to simmer. Simmer means that it's just going to be kind of jiggling around and not really boiling, but just very gentle bubbles coming through. And the reason this is so important is because when you boil peas, they're going to stay with their shape intact, kind of. If you get them to simmer, the water is going to enter into the peas, they're going to swell, and the carbohydrates in there are going to break down. And that's when you get the really nice creamy peas. If you boil them, it's going to be a little bit starchier. So again, you could do that, but it's not going to be quite as phenomenal of a split pea soup eating experience. Okay, so what are those again? Number 1, don't use salt. Number 2, once it gets boiling, turn it down to minimum. And then you just wait for them to cook into deliciousness. After that, I will show you how we're gonna finish this off and make an amazing, delicious, easy, healthy split pea soup. Okay, so if you manage to follow the directions of not adding salt and letting this simmer for quite some time, you will get some super, super soft split peas. Look at that. They're coming apart on their own. Now I'm gonna puree this because I want the onions to get mixed up in here as well. Before I do that, I am going to take out the bay leaves because they're not so good to eat. Hand blender makes a perfect tool for pureeing soups because once you're done, all you do is take this off and then that is all you gotta wash. Plus, you can puree it right in the pot so I can keep going with making this. So there is the texture of my soup. If you want it thicker, then you can do it with less water or more peas. Or you can add some something thick here, like a coconut milk or something like that. But anyway, moving on. We're gonna add some salt. And what I'm gonna add in here, because it's so tasty and salty, is some miso. This is fermented soybean paste. And so I'm just gonna stir it in here. But if you don't have miso, don't worry about it. Just use some salt. And you can throw a bit of soy sauce or tamari in there if you want to. But it might have a little bit too much flavor. The miso is kind of just a rich, salty flavor. So what you want to do here is just add enough salt that the flavor comes through. So you're going to want to give this a taste a few times to make sure it's good for you, and start small because you can always add a little bit more, but you can't take it out. All right, now for my super special addition to this soup, I'm going to add some sun-dried tomatoes. And you can soak these in water beforehand and they'll really soften up, or you can put them in the soup and let them marinate for a little while and they will soften and swell with the soup. So what I'm gonna do is just take my kitchen scissors and cut some little bits in there. And what this will do is they're gonna have a really nice salty bite to them. So every so often when you take a bite of your soup, you're gonna have a little salty sun-dried tomato coming at you. Can also do this really nicely with olives, sun-dried tomatoes. All right, guys, that's it for the recipe today. Again, you can get all of the amounts and ingredients and directions and all that fun stuff over at healthyveganrecipes.net. If you're interested in more nutrition and healthy eating information, head over to healthyeatingstartshere.com. And I hope you enjoy your soup.